In this documentary, we'll be looking back at the history of the sport, seeing how it's evolved into the modern day, finding out how you can get into it, and seeing if this could be the answer to the UK's battle on fitness. Although the idea of people modifying bikes to go off-road has existed since the 1800s, the first record of people properly changing their bikes for off-road use was at the start of the 1930s. The earliest ancestors of modern mountain bikes were based around the styles from cruiser bicycles, such as those made by Schwinn, and the only changes that were made to them were to install what they called balloon tyres. These were to become standard tyre sizes in the 21st century, but back then were groundbreaking. This continued on to the 1970s, with people racing down fire roads and whatever they could find. At this point there were no bike parks or custom-built trails, so people just had to put up with whatever they could find. At this point there was a very small group of people doing this, but it was growing rapidly. It was not till the late 1970s when demand started to really grow. Bicycle companies now started to produce proper mountain bikes, where the big changes were flat handlebars and frames that would fit wide tyres, making them by today's standards no more different to a standard bike. These were big changes though back in the late 70s, and by the 1980s the first mainstream mountain bike was made, the Specialized Stunt Jumper. Still made today, this bike has been going on for over 30 years.
So it all started back in the day with Specialized, so you got the Stunt Jumper Specialized, which was the first commercial mountain bike, and it's still in production today.
At the time, the bicycle industry was not impressed with the mountain bike, regarding it to be a short-term fad that wouldn't last. A good example of this being large manufacturers like Schwinn and Fuji failed to see the significance of an all-terrain bicycle and the coming boom in adventure sports. Moving into the 1990s and the first decade of the 21st century, mountain biking moved from a little-known sport to a mainstream activity. Mountain bikes and their gear, once only available at specialist shops or by mail order, became available at standard bike stores. By the first part of the 21st century, even department stores started selling inexpensive mountain bikes with full suspension and disc brakes. In the modern day, mountain bikes do more than people could ever have dreamt of in the 1970s, with adjustable seats and full suspension, and events designed especially for mountain biking. The sport today has become as big as road biking was back then. So now we're going to see how you can get into it. Getting into mountain biking isn't as hard as you may think. Really, all you need is a bike and you can get a good idea of what it's like. Although basic equipment like a helmet and a bike with suspension will make it a lot better, considering that some places won't even let you in if you're not wearing a helmet, anyone can really ride some of the more basic trails. Much like skiing, there's a system in place for you to know how hard the trail is going to be. This will be posted at the start of any official trail and will give you an idea of what you're about to come up against. Green is for anyone and won't have anything apart from a flat trail and some uneven paths. Blue is intermediate, and this is where you'll start to see features resembling a mountain bike trail, For example, Wakeley Woods, where I interviewed Rob, was a blue trail and features small rocky climbs, berms, big routes and some jumps. As a blue trail though, there are ways around everything if you don't feel up to it. This makes blue trails a very good starting place for anybody who wants to get an idea of what it would be like. Red and black are where things really get big. Means you need to have a lot of experience to ride these trails, and you'd certainly want some things like knee pads and a helmet at least. Mostly you'll see these sort of ratings at bike parks, although some forests will have them as well. Public forests for families don't tend to want to make these because they're so extreme, and don't want to risk the safety of most of the public. Let's speak to Rob, who has been mountain biking for many years, and see what he thinks about the trail ratings.
It can help you. It gives you a general idea, but you won't ever know until you actually do the trail yourself. So it gives you an idea, but...
I tend to find that red trails can actually be easier than they state.
Yeah. Advice. So, first of all, if you want to get into mountain biking, be committed, because there's no point in buying, a decently priced mountain bike if you're not gonna mountain bike every now and then. Also, for a starter, anybody who's never ridden a bike before, or a mountain bike of that kind, I'd probably advise getting a hardtail, something like that.
Much like a car, not all bikes are made the same. Like Rob was saying, a hardtail, which means that there is no rear suspension, is a great place to start. The two main areas to look at when buying a bike is its drivetrain, which is a collective term for the gears. Just because a bike has more gears doesn't make it better. These days, a 1x system, which has around 12 gears all on the rear cassette, are the much better option. The other main area to look at is if the bike suspension is an air or spring. Although with an air you will need to top it up every now and then with a special pump, this is by far the better system to have and makes the bike a lot nicer to ride. So what are your favourite things about the sport?
About mountain bike, it's the adrenaline, to be honest. So the adrenaline it's an adrenaline rush, to be honest.
In 2010, the Chief Medical Officer for England called for a doubling of walking and an 8-fold increase in cycling, creating things like the Cycle to Work scheme in the process. All of this has been done to try and get people in the UK active, which even when holding the Olympics back in 2012, did nothing to improve the country's fitness. This is one of the main problems facing the country, and experts say that only 32% of teenagers are meeting the recommended amount of exercise per day. And this doesn't get better. Physical activity levels decline rapidly with increasing age. Over 65s attain less than half of the physical activity of 16 to 34-year-olds. All of this showing that something needs to be done. This isn't good for the country as a whole either. Non-healthcare costs such as loss of productivity gives an estimated total cost of 8.2 billion, with an additional 2.5 billion for the contribution of inactivity to the obesity problem. According to the research from the University of North Carolina, people who cycle for 30 minutes, 5 days a week, take about half as many sick days. Considering that we have a problem, as a whole, biking is a great idea and is very enjoyable. And it doesn't need to be mountain biking. Road, cross-country and enduro are all other areas that have their own communities. Let's speak to Rob and see if he feels he's gotten fitter.
Yep, I do, ever since I started a couple of years ago. I've definitely gotten a lot fitter. It doesn't happen instantly, you've got to actually get out consistently, ride your bike, but I'm definitely a lot fitter now.
I hope you enjoyed this documentary showcasing what mountain biking has to offer. You might consider trying it. Finding places to ride is as easy as loading up Google. Thanks for watching.